Shabbat Shalom. I invite you to do an exercise today, a spiritual exercise in the circumcision of our hearts at the Mount Sinai. The Bible is describing in the text of today. Can you circumcise your own heart? The Bible gives two possibilities. One is not possibilities, but two scenarios. One is that God does it. The other one is that we need to do it ourselves as well. It's and not either or. The gam begam, the Hebrew. So this is what we're going to do. The text of the day is the central text of the whole Bible, because this is the text in which God is visiting. Israel is worshiping God, with God himself being there, being present. The situation is temporary in the sense that Israel can only do this so for such a time as it was available. Then they move on. This situation will never come back for the time being, and the only thing Israel has done and could do is repeat by building the tabernacle in the wilderness, by building the temple in Jerusalem, and imitating a little bit of the incredible, impressive situation in this desert. And that's what's happening today, and everything else is commentary, I would almost say, in the Bible. So let's read the texts in that light, starting with the book of Exodus. You'll get this on the screen, Exodus chapter 18, verse 1 through 4. There's more to read, but you will read on the screen itself. I'm only reading 4 verses. Keep in mind this exercise of circumcision of the heart. It sounds very impossible, but it isn't, because it's while you're doing this. At the end, the exercise will come. The text. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel his people, how that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, received Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her away, and her 2 sons. The name of one son was Gershom, for Moses said, I have lived as a foreigner in a foreign land, and that's what that means. Ger, meaning a stranger, and Sham or Shom, there. The name of the other one was Eliezer, meaning my father's God was my help and delivered me from Pharaoh's sword. Well, that's the text. It's incredibly impressive and totally unique. This visit of the Lord, the creation of the world, the creation of heaven and earth, on the Mount Sinai. On Mount Sinai. And about 50 days, more or less, either more than less, but 50 days, the people of Israel, being chased after, is on her way to the promised land. Moses had fled from the court, the Egyptian court. He arrived at the gates of the city of the land of Midian, married a girl from the Midianites. She happened to be the daughter of the local priest, the head, the sheikh. His name Yitro in Hebrew, Jethro in English. And Moses became a sheep herder of this family. One day he arrives at Mount Sinai, Har Sinai in Hebrew, and he meets the Eternal One in a burning bush. He receives the call. God is ordering him to pick up his people from Egypt after 10 big plagues, and then fleeing away. And this is what Israel does. Israel is able to flee from this claw, this very bloodthirsty claw of Egypt at the time, away from the murders on the baby boys, away from the murdering slavery. After some days, I just make it into 50. Imagine in the burning Negev desert, totally at 0 centigrade. At night, they arrive at this mountain. Sinai was the mountain of which God had told Moses that Moses would return there. And you read this in Exodus 3, verse 11 and 12. It's on the screen, I'll read it to you. Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" God said, "Certainly I will be with you. This will be the token to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this very mountain." So there they were, almost. Almost, because before they got there at Mount Sinai, Jethro decides to go on a journey. Focus of the journey, the purpose of the journey is to go to Moses with his people. He heard through the grapevine, he heard the exciting through messengers going to and fro, the exciting reports of the deeds, the heroic deeds of Moshe and his people. He was impressed, and he goes on this journey with his daughter, the wife of Moshe, and their 2 sons, Gershom and Eliezer. Now Jethro has people with him who can bring heralds, who can bring messages to when they are asked to do this. And Jethro sends one of those messengers to the camp where Moses is to let them know that he is arriving. The question is, how could they determine the course? They didn't have GPS, although they had, in a sense, that people could read the stars and knew how to determine their directions. But very impressive how they can find their way in such a incredible big element of sand everywhere. How can you know where north, south, east and west is? Well, the sun helps you and stuff like that. But then to find the people that you are looking for. Anyway, it happened. The 2 men meet. Moses comes out of his camp and he goes toward his father-in-law to meet him and to greet him and to invite him to the village. This you find in the New Testament as well, coming out of your city, and then coming to the approaching person who has such an elevated position. It's in the New Testament where Messiah comes from heaven, and his people go up to greet him, to meet him, and some people think that then his following constituents will stay with him somewhere in the air. But it is the same picture of coming to greet and invite a person and to bring him and escort him into the camp. And they ask each other how they are doing. And in Hebrew, there are many ways to ask the other person how he or she is doing. Many words, many expressions, showing that in the Hebrew culture it is a habit to spend time asking the other person and then not taking an answer for an answer, but ask again in another way and in a different way and again and again. In Hebrew it goes like manishma, meaning how are you? And the answer could be Baruch Hashem, nothing like an answer, just praise God. And then Machadash, meaning what is new, and then the answer could be Toda La'el, praise to God. And then another question, Ma'inyanim, like what are the new situations that you've gone through, and the answer could be Lora, not bad. And then Makore, like what's happening, and the answer could be Klum, nothing special. Or Makara, meaning what has happened. And then the question, Ech ata margish, how do you feel? And the answer could be Mitsuyan, excellent. And you can continue this for minutes and 15 minutes and 20 minutes. In the end, they go and go about their business and talk business with each other. And you find a piece of that conversation in chapter 18 of Exodus from verse 8. I'll read it. It comes on the screen. Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake. All the hardships that had come on them on the way, and how the Lord delivered them. Period. Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, in that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro said, "Blessed be the Lord who has delivered you out of the hands of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know, because of all this I've seen and heard, now I know that the Lord is greater than all the gods, because of the thing in which they dealt arrogantly against them." That was an incredible discovery that Jethro had made, and there was a result in his actions because of it. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering, sacrifices for God. Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread. That's what it literally says in the Bible. Look it up. It says to have a meal. Literally it says to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. The eating of bread is an expression in Hebrew meaning that you ritually bless God for the food that he gives. You clean your hands, you break bread, that you also use a little salt to sprinkle upon it, and then to say this blessing. It's an old habit to start a meal. So then they go about their business, and you see how Jethro is impressed, and he comes to faith in God. There is a total return in the life of Jethro. The man met the God of Israel because of what? Because he heard so many things that it was perhaps gruesome what he heard. It was perhaps very embarrassing, or it was making him very unrestful. He could have gone out of his way to do something about it, but he didn't. He waited, he trusted the God that he knew, and when all this happened, he realized that the God of Israel was the God above all gods. Because he waited until he saw all the deeds of this God, he could make this decision to be connected with the God of Israel. And this is a beautiful lesson for all of us. The more we worry about situations and conditions in our lives, for instance, coronavirus, the more we worry, the less visible the saving work of the Lord we can see. The less visible is this work that God does. And we will see good things after a certain amount of time, but we will not be able to see God's hand in it. The more we focus on all the mistakes that we think we can see because we think that we know everything about Corona, the less we will see of the good development when God moves to act. And we could see and we could interpret the good change if we have this critical mind, this unrestful mind, this mind that is focusing more on the negative earthly things than on God himself. We could explain it as the government finally saw the light or something like that, instead of praise God like Jethro did. Important lesson. And then Jethro comes with an advice. It is an unasked for advice. And you find it in this same chapter, verse 17, where we are reading in chapter 18, verse 17, where it says, Moses' father-in-law said to Moses, it's on the screen as well, the thing that you do is not good. Thank you, father-in-law. Sometimes fathers-in-law are allowed to say these kind of things. I've experienced in this. And what is his son going to do? Well, The fact is that Moses will accept his words. So then the question is, how come? How is it possible for Moses to accept this point of criticism? I think because Moses has learned to be so safe with God, so safe in his doing and not doing, his speaking and not speaking, and his knowing that he is taken care of by the Lord, that he can accept criticism without feeling that he is being attacked personally. So they're talking together, talking for hours, eating and talking and smoking their water pipe. I'm throwing this in myself. Jethro is saying to his son-in-law how the system of the law system, the way that the law is applied in the lives of people, could work much more effective. You are exhausting yourself, Moshe. And Moshe accepts the advice of his father-in-law. A man alone could not do all these people. How many people are we talking about? In chapter 12, we read, after all these events, the children of Israel moved and they went from Ramses to Sukkot. This is the beginning of this big trip of Israel. About 600,000 men walking, not counting the children, you find in verse 37. In Numbers, chapter 1, verse 46, we read that it's talking about also about 600,000, but now it's soldiers. Then it's not counting the spouses, the children, the elderly people who are not active in the military. And then there is also this people of other different nations joining Israel. So then you talk about a total of perhaps 2 million people. Realize that the total population of Egypt at the time is counting not more than at the most 6 million people, with an army 3 times as big as the army of Israel. So this was a threatening situation. 2 million people, Jewish people, difficult to be the one and only judge over them. Jethro lets him know that he should organize a system, construct a system of wise people, men of high standing, moral standing, judges that can speak speak and decide and judge over 1,000 people, and then also judges for 100 people, judges over 50, judges over 10. That will work. Jethro is saying and guaranteeing that it will work. If Israel exists of 600,000 people that are allowed to enter the tent with a judge, then this would mean 600,000. That would mean that there would be 600 judges over 1,000, 6,000 over 100 people, 12,000 over 50 people, and 60,000 over 10, counting together 78,600 judges, men who were looked upon as people with quality. Now you could ask why this detail in a situation where Israel is preparing to meet the God of Israel in the desert. But when you look at that, think about it like this. There are certain situations in the Bible where a contrast is created between the helpless, mortal human way of living and God who is coming into the situation. This is one of them. Because it shows clearly that there is a situation where a man alone cannot serve all these people. But there is one God who is the judge of all and who is able to do it. There's the contrast. So the Bible shows that the law, Torah, is given by this one and only judge the Eternal One himself. He's the only one who can fulfill the position that Moses could try but couldn't continue. And there are more of those situations in the Bible. Moses, who was born and put in a basket, and hopefully he will survive because he needs to become the leader of the people of Israel. It's this contrast of human frailty and God's power, in the same way that the arch mothers of Israel, Sarah and Rebecca and Leah, could not get children, and they and it's God who makes it possible for them to become pregnant. In other words, this is how the Bible shows the importance of God. After this very important meeting with his wise man, Moses is changing the judicial system. And Moses' father-in-law will leave again and returns to his land Midian. It is counted that this situation will take a year. Israel lived in this camp for a year before moving to Mount Sinaï, where the meeting with God would take place. So Israel leaves and they enter the desert called Sinai. And they build up their camp in front of Mount Sinai, Har Sinai in Hebrew. Then there is a conversation between God and Moses. Will the people be allowed to also enter the mountain? Will they not? And perhaps God says, perhaps we could do this. But God had also asked Moses to surround the mountain in such a way that they could not go through the gates. And it would be a blockage. And so Moses is reminding God, but you asked us not to, for them not to move and not touch the foot of the mountain. Okay, says God, you're right. Just testing if you're awake. So only Moses is allowed to climb the mountain. And God does a specific expression where God calls the people of Israel as a royal kingdom of priests, a holy people. Special title. Israel receives God's Spirit when they hear this. Don't think that the Spirit of God comes in the New Testament, in the book of Acts. It's there, right then and there, because they say as with one voice, together, as if they speak in one voice, the words, everything that the Lord has said, we will do. A special act when you are with 600,000 men to say these words in the same tempo and the same speed and the same words also. Thunder and lightning and a heavy mountain on a heavy cloud on the mountain and a horn, a shofar sound making a lot of noise. The whole camp is shaking. The sound of the shofar of the horn is becoming louder and louder. Moses speaks. The Lord is answering him in thundering sound. Then comes the moment that God himself, the creator of heaven and earth, descends on Mount Sinai, on the top of the mountain. And the Lord calls Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses climbs up. Moses, I'm there. I'm just landed now. Come on, get up. You need to imagine this in your imagination. See this scene, this very impressive picture. You need to have it on your spiritual eye. From another world, from a different reality, the Lord of heaven and earth comes to the earth, comes to humankind. Very important, unique, has never happened before in this special way, and will never happen before for the time being. It's a different world. You find this expression in the New Testament, where Yeshua, Messiah, Jesus in English, is saying the same thing. My kingdom is not of this world; it's a different world. Moses is seeing things that no one else has seen. We need to realize that it needs to be impressed upon the soul of the people of Israel, a soul that we share through time, through distance, that heaven comes to earth. It's unique. This is how close we are from earth to heaven, and yet we cannot reach by human power. It doesn't go by itself. The Lord is asking for the greatest amount of attention for this. And the more realistic you realize this and experience this, the more your life will change with this scene. It is a central scene in all of Judaism. The services in the temple have been built around it, and in churches and in synagogues after that in our times, all stems from this situation. And when you read the text, details come and go that ask our attention. Yes, the mountain had a barrier, but the details are important because this is the picture we get. That's all we get. After leaving this so important place, there's never been such an impressive moment again. That's the one thing that makes it important to look at the details. And the other thing is, this is why Israel is repeating and copying this situation, making it visible in order to preserve the impression, the memory of it. And we read about the foot of the mountain, we read about the mountain itself, we read about the cloud and about the thickness and the glory of the cloud, the darkness of the cloud and the light inside. The people don't get any further than the foot of the mountain. That's their barrier. Moses comes much further and he enters this thick cloud. It's there where he has his conversation, his contact with God, where he doesn't eat, where he receives the law. But it's much more that he receives, because this law is talked about in the Hebrew texts as the law by which you live. You will live when you do this. And in the New Testament, James, Yaakov in Hebrew, is saying that this law is the law of freedom, and it is the law that you will recognize yourself in. Very interesting mystical language. You hear the law and do it, and you will be like somebody who stands in front of a mirror. You see yourself because you are dealing with the law, and because you're applying the law, you will walk away from the mirror, which is the moment of reading, but you will remember it because you do it, and you will be the person that God wants you to be, and your heart is being circumcised. Israel has taken this into consideration, and if you look at the screen again, please, there are 4 things that I just mentioned, but I'm mentioning them again. There is the foot of the mountain, the gate of the temple, and you could compare this with the front door of your congregation. You could compare it with a short prayer that you, oh God help me please, something like that. Is it not an important prayer because the only words are, oh God help me please? Very important. But there's more. It's not like it's low. No, it's the beginning of something beautiful, being your contact with the Lord. And that's only the foot of the mountain. Israel was there, and the people of the other nations were there as well. This is not an Israel only thing, not a monopoly of God, of Israel. This is other nations who were there, and representatives of other nations were there, which is important to know. The second thing is the mountain itself, not the foot of the mountain, but the mountain itself, to be compared with the court of the temple court, where the tasks of the priests and the Levites took place. Compared with the tasks you might have in your congregation, however small or bigger it is. And realize that whatever you do for the Lord, also during the week, you could do in the light of God, doing it for Him. That saves you from disappointment if you do something and nobody is realizing or thanking you for what you're doing. The third level is the cloud. Not the thickness, but the cloud itself. Compare it with the holy of the temple. Not the holy of holies, but the holy of the temple. It's when in your congregation, if you go there, but it's Corona time, so be very, very careful, when the services start. But at home, it's like reading the Bible and praying and singing and dancing. And the fourth level, the most intense level, where Moses was allowed to go into, is the thickness of the cloud. The kaved in Hebrew, meaning the heaviness, the glory of the cloud, the holy of holies. Now the service is running, or you're worshipping at home. And each of these levels in our lives now, we need to connect very consciously to the unique visit of the Lord. Because this is the description we have. It's not there for nothing. He came to us from above to us down here. And we need to see that we come from here to there. And we will if we give ourselves to the Lord and we trust Him. It is not these four things, I need to be at the fourth level. No, all the levels count. All the levels count. It's important that we recognize four levels and that you see, okay, now I'm more in the third or in the second, perhaps in the first level. That's okay as well, because we cannot be holy all the time, or we would not be holy. Holy means different. Let there be a different then. They all have their own value. There needs to be difference. You're never only at the top. Also in your lesser spiritual moments, you're connected with these unique moments when you choose to experience it that way. But realize that Moses has been there at the highest level. His highest level, which is out of the scale of what I'm describing here. It's more than this. He was the fourth, but more than that. Let's go to the second text, Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 through 4. I read, it's on the screen. In the year that King Uzziah died, says Isaiah, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and his train, his cloak, filled the temple. I was totally impressed. How can I even speak the words? Above him stood the seraphim, angels, fiery angels. Each one had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, with 2 he flew. One called to the other and said, Holy, Kadosh, 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 holy, holy, holy is the Lord of the armies. The whole earth is full of his glory. It's only a matter of seeing it, of opening your eyes to see this. The foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with holy smoke. Which is an impressive text. This man, Isaiah, has seen more than many people will ever see. Was it real time or was it a vision? Also this Isaiah has been on this highest level. Was he just a lucky man that he happened to see this? I don't think so. I think that Moses and Isaiah are 2 examples of men with a very high spiritual level of being, of consciousness. I'm talking about men, but there are women as well, also in the Bible, with a high portion of Spirit of God in them. You don't see that often. Realize that we get insight through the vision of Isaiah in how it looks like there where God is. And then we need to realize that we are perhaps not holy enough to see what Isaiah saw, what Moses experienced. Realize the difference in level. It's not a problem. There's a lot about that in the Bible, about this difference. One of the differences that you find out if you begin to see this, I hope, is the difference between the 6 work days of the week and the Shabbat, which is a holy day. Don't say all the days are the same because I pray every day. The Bible wants you to see the difference between the days. It should be different. The 6 days should be different. And you need to realize if there's no difference with the Shabbat, you have a problem. Needs to be a different day. The second thing, the difference between all the food that there is in the world, or that people call food, and the food that is allowed by the dietary laws in the Bible. Also kept and maintained in the New Testament. It's so very holy what Isaiah is allowing us to see and to hear and to know, that some of what he is describing we use in the Jewish services to worship God. Holy, holy, holy. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh are words that are mentioned in the prayers. Let's go to the third text of today in the Berit Chadashah, meaning the New Testament, and then Hebrews chapter 9 verse 27 through chapter 10 verse 3. This author, we don't know who it is very much impressed with the services outside of the city of Jerusalem, which in his time had become corrupt. Sorry to say. There we go. Inasmuch as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that judgment, so also the Messiah, having been offered once to bear the sins of many, will appear a second time, without sin, to those who are eagerly waiting for him to salvation. This is an interesting sentence that you need to see and read through a couple of times. For the law, having a shadow of the good to come, this sounds like, oh, it's only a shadow. No, he's singing and praising God for the law, but it's not like the law is only low, but what we know is much better. No, the law is beautiful because look where it comes from. This incredible, unique moment at Mount Sinaï. It can only be better than that, even better. That's how he sees it. Not low and good, but good and better. For the law, having a shadow of the good to come, a promise of the good to come, not the very image of the things, the law can never, with the same sacrifices year by year, which they offer continually, make perfect those who draw near. The law cannot do it. The law is only a set of rules in a sense, but it's a spiritual document, Paul says, Romans 7, verse 12 and verse 14. Continue. Or else wouldn't they have ceased to be offered, because the worshippers, having been once cleansed, would have had no more consciousness of sins. But in those sacrifices there is a yearly reminder of sins. So he looks at this system as a great system of grace, because the sacrifices were giving a way of escape, giving a way of being forgiven. Wonderful. And yearly you were reminded of your sins. Not bad, because they are not gone. They have not disappeared. But there is a more beautiful reality waiting for us. So Messiah comes again, is what this text is saying. The time when he will come is to bring world peace. Again with the sound of the horns, the shofar HaMashiach. All of Judaism is waiting for the shofar of the Messiah. It's so impressive, this second coming. But it has been so impressive for Israel, this first coming of the Lord on Mount Sinai, that the letter to the Hebrews, the Messianic Jews, is still talking about it. If you see, please, at the screen, the text which comes now in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 18 through 22. We were in chapter 9, now we go to chapter 12, and then verse 18 through 22. There we go. For you have not come to a mountain that might be touched and that burned with fire, and to blackness, darkness, storm, the sound of a trumpet, and the voice of words which those who heard it begged that not one or more word should be spoken to them, for they could not stand that which was commanded, meaning, if even an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. And so fearful was the appearance that Moses said, I'm terrified, I'm trembling. No, you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable multitudes of angels. The misunderstanding of this piece of text sometimes is that people who read it think that the first situation that he describes in this verse 18, you have not come to a mountain with the burned fire, blackness, dark storm and stuff like that, is a low thing, and the good is still to come. This Hebrew author is describing this beautiful, unique, very impressive, always kept in memory, impressed as a footprint in the souls of the Jewish people and those who are allowing God to have Him impress them as well. That this first coming of God on this Mount Sinai was also very impressive. So it's not low versus beautiful. It's incredibly impressive versus even more incredibly impressive. So this is one of the most important and most impressive portions in the Torah, in the Bible, Hebrew Bible, which exist in all the texts. The Lord, the Creator of heaven and earth, descending on Mount Sinai. God Himself giving His precious information, becoming Torah to Moshe, and from Moses to His people, and the people are with them, and from them through the ages to us now. The way in which the Lord comes to us on our earthly level is beautiful. He reminds Israel of the mighty deliverance that He has done, a liberation, and then He counts on it that Israel will trust Him. And the Lord is demanding obedience. After 3 days of preparation, the Lord descends on the mountain as He promised Moses. And the effects that you see are so impressive. The thundering sound, the lightning, thick cloud, fire, loud shofar sounds. And read Isaiah with his details, perhaps only in a vision. I'm sure what it is. Something like a very impressive imagery that he shares with us. And then Mount Sinai, like shaking and moving. This all added to the fact that God Himself comes to earth and stands on it, next to Moses, covering with His hand the face of Moses when the Lord walks by. Moses speaking to the Lord, the voice of the Lord, which is audible. And all of Israel is waiting for the moments that these sounds of the shofar, of the horn, will sound again, because we will know that Messiah will come to bring divine peace. And that is so much better and so much incomparable better than which political peace ever. Such an incredible, impressive and convincing situation is all this, that Jethro is convinced, brings his daughter, Moses' wife, back to him with the sons, and comes to faith. And they talk. Why? Because they heard the heroic reports about Israel and the God of Israel. This is what convinces people, if they have their eyes focused on heaven instead of only on earth. You should not close your eyes for what's going on earth, but don't forget to look up. The marriage of Moses and his wife, Tzipporah, a Midianite, is the confirmation of a relationship that can be there between Jew and not Jew. It was already there when the children of Israel left Egypt with a crowd from other peoples. We need to realize that Jews and non-Jews need the forgiveness of the Lord because of everything we've done wrong, because of the gap between man and God. And we need to realize that this so necessary forgiveness is available. This is why the entrance is there to come to the moment to receive that. The place where the Eternal One spoke was Sinai Desert. Sinai Desert, a hot place, a place not to be. In order to describe and in order to indicate that contact with relationship with the Eternal One could be, for people, could be more clear and more audible when the circumstances are less comfortable than we wish. Always when there is a sort of a limitation, we are more prone to listen and to say, help me out of this uncomfortable situation. We're not created to be in uncomfortable situations. Hey, uncomfortable situations are our way of life, are necessary ingredients of life. So they were in the desert, and this was a time of being in touch with God. Where else? So translate this to our time of coronavirus time. Who thinks that this time of coronavirus infections is difficult? Which I'm one of them. For all those people, it's good to realize that we will be able, in this time, we will be more able to experience the Lord than in more quiet times. I realize that my complaining doesn't bring me closer to Him. Not either when I focus on the negative facts, even facts. You think, oh, facts are good, we need to know all the facts. But if I focus on the negative, I might not focus on God. Do I hide from the facts? No, but don't forget the contact with God. That's what I'm saying. Desert Sinai has 5 impressive names mentioned in the Bible, which express something of this place and therefore also of this what you can experience there in this literal geographical desert, but also in a situation which you experience as a desert situation. The first name is of course Sinai itself, and you find it, for instance, 5 names of the desert Sinai you find on the screen. The first name is Sinai itself. You find it in Exodus chapter 19 verse 2. The name Sinai comes from a Hebrew word sneh, S-N, and something else, meaning the thorny bush. So it's the aspect of the thorny bush. What's the importance of it? Very important importance, because it's the place where Moses had a unique situation. This is not even repeated. The descending on the mountain and the giving of Torah, yes, but not this meeting of God in this burning bush. Sneh is the burning bush. And then it is not Sinai, but Sinai, and this yi sound has a value, numerical value of 10, because of the 10 words that Moses received among the rest of all the words of the Torah, with the 10 words as the table of content, you could say. So there's this word Sinai, with the meaning of the desert is the place for a personal meeting with God. Oh, not in other situations? Yes, in other situations as well, but in desert situations even more so. The second name is the word tzin, T-Z or Z, wherever you come from, I-N. And the T-Z reminds in chapter 16 of Exodus, verse 1. And the T-Z sound is also part of the word mitzvot, mitzvot, meaning the Hebrew word for the commandments. The desert experience is an experience of being limited. You want to reach something in your life. You want to reach a goal in your life. You need to limit yourself. If you think you can do everything, you'll come to nothing. If you want to be a soccer player, you need to limit yourself in terms of diet, in terms of spending time practicing and stuff like that. If you want to become a music player, piano or violin or whatever, you need to limit yourself in all the things you do, because you need to have time to practice and stuff like that. Limit. The desert, you say, yeah, but the desert situation is also about misery and difficulties. That's right. But the common denominator is being limited in your freedom. It will get you further, being limited in your freedom. It's like with the joints. If the joints of a human body would have all the freedom that could be available, you would not get anywhere, because they would go all directions except the good one, the right one. Limitation will get you somewhere. And so this is the tz name, the tzin name, the sin name. It is part of the Sinai, having to do with the commandments which are limiting. Dietary laws are limiting. Having 6 days to work and then one Shabbat is limiting. Desert limits, like the commandments. It is a condition to meet God. Like fasting and praying. Fasting is limiting yourself to eat in order to meet God. Then in Numbers, the number 3, there is the text in Numbers 33 verse 36, where sin is equal to Kadesh or Kadesh. And so we see that those are synonyms. Kadesh is a Hebrew word meaning holy. And the holy, the process of becoming holy as a result of those limitations, even suffering. Suffering is a way that God can use, if we allow Him, to be forgiven. It's suffering in this life helps you to not suffer in the next life. Sounds a little bit scary, but you say, now, well, I can think of situations that are very, very bad. Is this all God's work? No, it's not God's work. But He can use the bad stuff in the earthly scene, in the earthly arena, in order for us to better ourselves, if we allow Him. So this is the Kadesh part of the Sinai desert. Then also a synonym in Numbers 13, verse 26, the next one, where Kadesh in Paran is mentioned. Another name, which you also find in Numbers 10, verse 12. Paran means to multiply. What does that mean? Well, the desert, as a heavenly place of landing, of God landing on earth, is a place where if you are there and you utilize that situation, however bad it is, you will multiply the intensity of your meeting with God. Your faith, your circumcision of heart will increase. And the last name, the fifth name, is Kedemot. You find it in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 26. And Kedemot is a plural word of Kedem. And Kedem means in the past. And we're talking about the desert. So we're talking about God and God's presence there and His giving of the commandments. So the Torah, the whole system of the apparatus of the law exists before the creation of the world. It is from Kedem, from before. It's therefore in you. It's part of the creation order. It's part of our genes. This is why in the New Testament it says that there are people who don't know Torah because they read it, but they live by it. And so in Kedemot there is the aspect of rediscovering the value of God's law in order to find your new being, described in the book of James in the New Testament at the end of chapter 1. At the end of our study, we come to an end almost. I would do this exercise where we go again to the 4 levels of this foot of the mountain itself, the cloud and the thickness of the cloud, and to go there in our thoughts and go there again. And they have to do with more intense meeting of us with the Lord. At that moment, your heart is becoming circumcised again a little bit. So look at the screen as the final point of this study. And there's the first level, again, the foot of the mountain, the gate of the temple. Not the temple itself, the gate of the temple. That's where Israel was, the foot of the, picture yourself at the foot of the mountain. When you take a psalm as an exercise, a spiritual exercise, level 1 is reading the psalm, nothing more. Level 2 takes it one step further. The people at the time were not allowed to do this, but in this spiritual exercise we can. So now we go to the second level, which is the mountain, not the foot of the mountain, but the mountain, which is the court of the temple, where the tasks of the priests and the Levites were executed. In this exercise with reading the psalm, the second thing I would ask you to do is to read the psalm and apply it to a situation in your life. Read the psalm again, but now with in mind a specific situation where the psalm is bringing you to, looking at it, or saying in spite of what you're going through, such and such and so and so. If you take Psalm 91, for instance, but I'm not giving any suggestion, I'm giving you as an example. The psalm is saying, take cover in the Lord. In other words, it doesn't deal with your situation on earth. It says, because instead of being there in the situation, and so it connects you with the situation, but also with getting out of the situation and taking cover with the Lord. So take the psalm, whatever choice that is, and apply it to something in your life. Realize that what you're doing for the Lord, also during the week, has to do with this level as well. The third level is the cloud. Now we're coming closer. The holy, not the holy of holies, but the holy of the temple. Realize with this exercise of the reading the psalm, now we come to the level where we realize that it is the Lord who inspired the author of the psalm. We're not talking about the psalm only, we're not talking about the author of the psalm only, we're talking about the Lord who inspired him for the purpose of us to read this psalm and applying it into our lives, which was level 2. And the last level is the thickness, the glory of the cloud. We're entering the Holy of Holies, if ever that is possible. Virtually it is, but in real it's different, but that's not the point at this moment. The throne of the Eternal One. What to do with this psalm? Now we start to worship the Lord, who is the inspirator of the psalm, the psalmist, to write his psalm that we have applied to a situation into our lives. You see the whole spectrum now. We worship God sitting on his throne, with in mind the picture that as Isaiah has given us, with Messiah at his right hand, and you have a perfect way of entering these 4 levels of worship. And you can say to God, Adonai, you are my shepherd. I shall not want. This is the beginning of Psalm 23. And it's an interesting one because it is a psalm that deals with, I'm not giving any suggestion, but I need to say this, if you can forgive me for this. Psalm 23 is a psalm that deals with people who have, David in the first place because he wrote it, but people in general who have a limitation. Something has been taken away from them. And nevertheless, David says, I shall not lack. I don't need anything because I have everything. You are my shepherd, Lord. So that's why I'm saying this. In this time of perhaps limitation, a desert situation that you're in, things or people that are taken away from you, and you say, Adonai, you are my shepherd, I shall not want anything else. I love you. In Hebrew it goes like this: Adonai ata roi. Adonai, Lord, ata, you, roi, you are my shepherd. Lo echsar, the words of Psalm 23. Lo echsar, I shall not want anything else. Ani ohev otcha, I love you. Adonai ata roi. Lo echsar, ani ohev otcha. And with these words, I say Shabbat Shalom to you, and have a good week and stay healthy. Shabbat Shalom.